class, it's January, which means test taking season is just around the corner. I wanted to create a lesson that is intended to build your confidence as you take your test. And I believe if you implement these 7 test taking tips that I've created, you're gonna do great. So let's get started. The most important thing out of all these tips is for you to sleep. I wrote here, sleep is important not just for test taking, but for all aspects of learning. And not really just all aspects of learning, but all aspects of life. Sleep promotes brain development, physical development, and as we see here, Dr. Wayne from the National Institute of Health says that sleeping helps strengthen memories you form throughout the day. So make sure before your exam you have a good night's rest. It's crucial. And if you're a student who has bad sleeping habits, I get it, don't worry, I've been there. Make sure that you adjust your sleeping habit at least 2 weeks, I'd say, before you take your exam. Because if you have bad sleeping habits and you just only sleep well one day, it's not going to compensate for the rest of the other nights that you didn't sleep well. So make sure that you get a good night's rest at least 2 weeks before the exam consecutively. 2 weeks consecutively before that big exam. Study in intervals. I wrote here for my young learners that an interval is a break. So as you're studying, make sure that you take breaks. When you study until you're mentally exhausted, that's not healthy. It's neither healthy nor helpful. You're not going to retain anything when you study in really big chunks. Imagine if, I'll put it to you this way, imagine, and I'm sure all of you have done this, you binge watch your favorite show for like 4 or 6 hours. And then I come to you about 2 or 3 hours later and I ask you, what did you watch? Can you tell me everything that happened in those 4 to 6 hours that you watched that show? I don't think so. You may be able to tell me a couple key things that happened, but do you remember the details? And let's bring this back to testing. When you take a test, you gotta know the details. You have to know the information well. You can't know these theories and these things that you're being tested on in a broad sense. You have to know them to the core. You have to know the details. And the best way to remember information in an intricate way, in a very detailed way, is to take breaks. And it's also the healthiest way. I would recommend for maybe high schoolers and young adults to study 45 minutes, take a 20-minute break, and then do 2 more 45-minute sessions. So another 45 minutes, another 20-minute break, and then a 45-minute one again, and then just be done studying for that day. And make sure you make the most of the studying while you're doing that. And perhaps for my younger learners, I would suggest maybe 30 minutes, and then like a 15-minute break, and another 30 minutes, and then another 15-minute break. And what does this mean? It means you're not going to cram you're not going to have an all-night session, and you're not going to cram. This means that you're studying for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, every day until your exam. So plan accordingly. Okay, read the question 3 times. You're going to read the question 3 times if you have, let's say, an English exam where you need to read a passage. But if you don't need to read a passage and you're taking a psychology final or a science exam, then you're going to read the question 2 times. So for my learners who are taking an English exam, you're gonna read the question, well, you're gonna look at the text, the passage. You might look at the title, see what it's about, and then you're going to go and look at the questions, and you're gonna read all the questions. And then you're gonna go back and read the passage. When you're done reading the passage, you're going to go and you're going to read the question again and you're going to answer it. What is the benefit of reading the questions before you read the passage? I'll let you think for a second. If you thought, because you might find the answer while you're reading the text, you are correct. That's why we read the question before we read the text. We're going to read all the questions before we read the text because we may be able to underline answers as we're reading it. So when we go to answer our question, we already found it. And then we're going to read the question again after you answer it, or you're going to read the question again after you answer it to make sure that you read the question correctly and you answered it with the best response. Verbiage in state exams and sometimes exams in general, especially in college, the way the questions are worded can be sort of tricky. So make sure that you're reading it carefully. You can read it carefully once, but to be confident that you read it carefully, read it again before you move on to the next question, just to make sure you read it correctly. A lot of times students get questions wrong just because they didn't read the question right. And if they would have taken their time and read the question more carefully, they would have more than likely responded in the best way. Go with your gut. I say this because often when teachers tell students to go back and check their work before they've even turned it in, it creates a sense of doubt in students. The idea is to be confident when you're answering the question the first time. If you're gonna go back and check your work only because you may want to change some answers, I would say you probably weren't ready for that test, and it's not a good idea. When you first come across a question, you want to answer it with confidence that first time and know that you're getting it right as you're answering it. If you're not confident in that moment, mark it and go back to it. You can always go back to a question you're not sure about and then spend more time on it once you've answered the rest of the questions. So that's a better thing to do. Don't create doubt in your students. Students, don't be doubtful. When you come across a question, be confident, answer with confidence. Usually the first answer you think is correct is the correct one, so pick that one. Don't start changing all your answers at the end of the test. Don't do that. Read actively. Use your pencil, make notations as you're reading the text. I know for state exams, I would say perhaps every state exam in every school, maybe, I could be wrong, is on the computer. But I remember when I was taking state exams, which was a while ago, but it was still on the computer, and even on the English exams, they gave me a scrap sheet of paper. So if you can't underline supporting ideas, if you can't circle keywords, you can definitely write them down on that scrap sheet of paper they give you, or whatever it is they give you to write with. Use it. Use the pencil they give you. Use the paper they give you. And if the program you're reading it on has like highlighters and stuff like that, kind of like the Kindle does, then highlight the things you're reading. If it has that, if you could use that while you're taking a test, if it has like a digital highlighter, use it. And make sure for every test you take, make sure to identify the thesis statement. When you know the thesis statement in an article, in a news article, or in a persuasive text, an expository text, you're going to come across those during your exams. When you know this, it's going to help you. This is what the whole thing, the whole article is about, or the whole passage is about. So when you know this, it's going to help you answer a lot of the questions. So make sure to identify the thesis statement. I can't stress that enough. Check your work. Okay. When I say check your work, I mean it mostly for math exams or any exams that has numbers. It's very easy to check your work in math, especially if you're doing algebra or statistics, something like that. You can always take your numbers and put it back into the equation and make sure you're getting the correct response. And use every resource provided to your advantage. When you take a state exam, I believe up to high school, I was provided with a sheet that had formulas and things like that on it that helped me answer questions on the exam. Make sure you look at those formulas carefully and use that. Use that piece of paper to help you when you're taking your test. Use everything they give you. Find a way to use it. It's there for you so that you can do your best. Finally, iron sharpens iron. What do I mean by that? I mean that two heads is better than one. Studying with a peer or a friend is a great way to prepare for an exam. Make sure whatever friend you're studying with is competent in the area that you need to study, because some friends are opposites. You could have a friend that's good at math, and you may also be good at math, or you can have a friend that's, well, I suppose if you're opposite, it may help. I don't know. But make sure that your friend is good at, whoever you study with is as good as you in the subject or better. That's what I want you to know. And when you're going to study with them, make sure that you have a plan, because I know study sessions with friends can turn into something else and you may not even get anything done. So create a plan before you even meet. Make sure you're going to know what you're going to do when you meet, so that when you meet, you can just get started right away. And for those of you who like to study on your own, think of how great it could be studying with someone else. They can show you a simpler way to answer a question. They may have some secrets that you didn't know about. They can encourage you in your studying process. Sometimes, especially me, if I'm taking a practice test and I fail, I get so discouraged and I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna pass this test? You know, and I have to kind of pray and pump myself up, you know, and keep going. But when you have a friend, and when I've had a friend with me, they encourage you and they're like, you know, have a short memory. It's just a practice test. We have time. We have plenty of time. Where did you fail? What were the kind of questions that messed you up? And let's work on it together and I'll help you. So studying with a peer can be super encouraging. And finally, you can hold each other accountable. This is great. Holding each other accountable means you're asking them, did you do what you said you were gonna do? I said I was gonna do. Make sure you do this. You did it, right? Because I did this. And make sure that the friend you're studying with as well is someone you can count on, someone that you can hold accountable. Make sure, because if you guys are like law students do this a lot, they'll split up work. Make sure that they're doing the work that they need to do and the research they need to do to help you. And so that, not just to help you, but so that everyone can benefit. You, whether you're studying with a friend or if it's a group. So hold each other accountable. So so you can remember, I want you to, most importantly, sleep, right? We're summing up here. Remember to sleep, take breaks when you study, read carefully, check your numbers when you're taking that math test, or chemistry or science. Sometimes it's got math in there. Practice with a peer. I lost my train of thought here. Take notes. Take notes as you test. Make those notes. Make those notations if you can as you test. And finally, be confident. You're gonna do great. You're gonna do great. And you gotta go in knowing you're gonna do great. I wish you the best of luck during your examinations, and I will see you next class. Hi scholars, it's Barbie, your teacher assistant. If you like this video but feel like you need a little bit more help, you can always email me at ytaest23@gmail.com for a private tutoring lesson. My rates are very flexible. I make it work to work with you. Thank you so much for being part of this class, and don't forget to subscribe.